Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of stoner rock, exploring songs from the subgenre of stoner rock. It's pretty self-explanatory, yeah. We're going to be looking at the band High on Fire, which I've never even heard of before. We're going to be looking at a title track. I always love these. I don't know, there's something about the repetition. We're looking at Snakes for the Divine from Snakes for the Divine. Something about that it tickles my brain. I like title tracks. I also like it when title tracks match the band name. Something like Black Sabbath, playing Black Sabbath from Black Sabbath. It's just great. That's fantastic. I want to see that more. Anyways, let's dive into this, see what High on Fire is bringing to the table today. Yeah, so that's also like a heavy metal lick. Really big guitar sounds. Okay, so this pattern's fairly consistent this week. Heavy metal writing with modern big guitar production. Oh, timed weird. There, oh jeez. Yeah, they're rushing just the slightest amount. Really leaning into that groove there. They like to play around with time feel. Right there, it kind of feels like it slows down. Yeah. Very thin. There's an 8th note idea on the guitar, but it's real quiet. Something like that. It's very quiet, pushed into the background though. They really drag all this out too. See, there's that tiny guitar again. drums right in the pocket. Back to the intro lick. The harmonized duet, that's a nice touch. Interesting tonality there. Yeah, okay. Bringing some eeriness. Oh, we have like some wavy stuff over here. They've kind of alluded to this kind of groove earlier in the song, but they've never really leaned into it like this. Really nice foreshadowing. Oh, interesting. I figured they would have went back to the verse here, not back to this bridge idea. Okay. And bookend it with this. Okay, that's classy. Alright, I have a feeling this is going to be on the shorter side as far as analysis goes, because I don't know that I have a lot to talk about here. Probably more to talk about regarding what I learned about stoner rock than about the song in particular. I'm kind of surprised about this, actually. Looking at yesterday's Elder and Monday's Caius, this is kind of different. It still retains a lot of the same ideas. We still have a very big guitar sound. As far as production goes, it feels modern, but the composition feels very influenced by classic heavy metal. I find it to be a really interesting combination. It's starting to grow on me. I'm starting to hear how it works a little bit better, but it did kind of catch me off a little on Monday, catch me off guard. I am noticing a little bit more of the bluesy sound in this that we heard on Caius, but didn't really hear too much of on Elder. So maybe what I thought might have been an outlier with Caius maybe is a bit more of a normal element. As usual, the more that I listen to the genre, especially as we get through this week, and I have 5 hopefully solid examples to kind of learn from, I'll start to see some more patterns about what the genre is or isn't. But I will say that this one kind of caught me off guard a little bit because it's kind of missing a vibe, and I don't know how to explain that. I don't have a music theory word or anything like that to explain what it is. Elder and Caius kind of had a deserty feel to it. Something that, well, Caius a little less so. Or, sorry, Elder a little less so. But still, something in it that kind of made me feel like going on a journey. And this felt quite a bit less journey-like. This, to me, sounded like a perfect one-to-one replica of classic heavy metal with modern production and guitar tones and even kind of vocal production. I think the tone itself heralds a bit from the older days. In fact, it kind of reminds me of Motorhead a little bit. So definitely, once again, comes from an older era, but the layering in it and the production of it feel very modern. And maybe that's all that stoner rock is. Bringing the past to a modern, to the modern day with a topical paint job. And maybe that's all it is. I don't know. That's really the only thing that I can see that this song shares with the other two. And it actually wouldn't surprise me if maybe this was a sub-genre or kind of stoner rock, but not the best example, something along those lines. Because to me, it's very distinct. Despite having the similar blueprint, it feels different. And I think a lot of what makes it feel different is the adherence to that classic sound. We have a verse, and it is primarily focused on something that you can hear a lot of in classic metal stuff is 3 bars, or I think in this case it's 2 bars, but anyways, 75% of your phrase is pedal tones. It could be whatever speed or tempo or note length, but you just kind of stick on it forever. And then the back half is a punctuating idea. So on this one we have that and so you have this punctuating idea against a bunch of pedal tone. This is a staple of classic heavy metal. Heavy use of pedal tone in order to create something that feels driving and momentous, and then a cool lick to back that up, to create a little bit of contrast. This song is built off of that. We hear it for so long. These verses take forever to get through. And maybe if you enjoy this, it doesn't feel like that long, but me not really knowing what the lyrics are, my first time going through it, I'm listening for changes. I'm listening to what each of the instruments are playing. These sections feel like they drag on because I'm like, okay, the guitar's doing this, the bass is doing the same thing, the drums, they're just laying down a tempo, and the vocals are sort of alternating. They'll take a couple bars to sing and then a couple bars off. Also, a classic heavy metal staple. This sort of call and response between the guitars and the vocals. The vocals will sing over the pedal tones, and then they'll stop singing when the guitars have their punctuating lick. Classic idea. But because of this, I get everything. I figure everything out, how everything works together, what their roles are, what they're doing. And then that's it. There's no change to it. And then because of the taking turns, it takes twice as many bars to say the same amount of lines that most modern day vocalists would just get out. A lot of modern day vocal melody doesn't have this trade-off. The vocals just keep going all the time. There's no breaks for them. So these sections end up taking just so long to get, minutes to get through a verse, and it sounds cool. And if you're digging the atmosphere, I'm sure it doesn't feel that long. But again, with the way that I listen to music in this environment, I figured everything out. I'm waiting for the next idea, and it doesn't come for quite a bit of time. But then we get to the chorus, and I think this is cool because the song gets cut in half. The size of it is gone. It feels kind of narrow and empty comparatively. It's still a very big sound, but coming from that verse, it feels empty. There's a new, I don't know, tapping guitar idea or something. It's quiet. It's so quiet. I wish I could hear it. I don't understand the purpose of it. It's like the producer carved out a part of the song, a part of the low end, so that this moving guitar idea can be heard underneath the rhythmic atmospheric stuff. But then they made that guitar so quiet anyways, and it doesn't make any sense to me. But then we have constant vocals on top of that to keep the chorus going. That's our A and our B section. That takes up, well, that plus the faster riff that we had on the intro that we took like 50 seconds to get through. But the intro, the ABAB, that's like the first 4.5 minutes of this song. It takes up a lot of time to get through all that. And there's not a lot of depth to the music. You either enjoy it because it sounds cool, it's your kind of jam, or you don't. It's not changing. It's not going to alter itself. There's not much contrast or dynamic elements, not a lot of layering to it. The melody is, all the guitars are in on the same idea. You got your one vocal melody, but it's, if you think about how many ideas a song or a section has, it's relatively low. It ends up feeling a bit flat. There's not a lot of dynamic elements to it. Like I said, if you like it, you do. If you don't, yeah, there's not going to be anything around the corner for you to wait for. But this has actually been how stoner rock has treated me this week. Heavy metal riffs with big meaty guitars, sort of simplified writing. There's not a lot of depth to it, which is on par for classic heavy metal. And a pretty typical verse chorus structure. The bridge is where stoner rock has thrown me for a loop. Both Caius and Elder have gone in these expanded journeys across the bridges. There's these long exploration segments, and I was fully ready for Snakes on Fire, High on Fire, to do the same. And they didn't. They gave me a very typical heavy metal thing. They gave me a guitar solo. Granted, technically a duet. We have harmony on the entire solo by thirds, which isn't a great harmony, but it is something. Something better than we've had anywhere else in the song. I thought the solo was nice. It started out a bit slower, sped up over time. Pretty tasteful in that regard. We got to see a little bit of the guitarist's chops, but for the most part, it served what the song needed it to do. I like that. After that, though, we bring in what I think are tritones and introduce a brand new segment. This one quite a bit eerie. It's got some darkness to it, some tension to it. This, I think, fits the vocals a lot better than the heavy metal riffage that we saw earlier on. Granted, the very large guitar tones fit the vocals, but the harmonies, the melodies, what the guitars were playing, wasn't really working for me. There seemed to be a little bit of a divide versus the harsh antagonism of the vocal delivery and the rather driving and energetic and inviting guitar work. The only thing that I think was a bridge between the two, like I mentioned, was just the big, meaty, aggressive guitar tones, but not what they were playing, just how they sounded. So this section, I think we finally have a part of the song that matches the vocal delivery. It's Doesn't really match the rest of the song. Again, because we have the big meaty guitars, I can see a bridge here, but there's a very big leap in atmosphere and emotion from everything else in the song to this moment. Now, we did kind of allude to this a little bit. During the guitar solo duet thing, there was a section of interesting harmony. The guitarist chose a few notes in a row from outside the key, which introduced quite a bit of instability harmonically. It's, I don't know if it was chromatic or not. It felt chaotic, I'll say that. It didn't really feel like any sort of key or mode that I can just nod to and be like, okay, that's definitely a collection of notes that aren't all of the notes, which is what chromatic is. It's all of the notes that we have in the typical 12-tone Western division of sounds. But it definitely introduces some tension, something that feels a little off. And chromatic can kind of do that. Maybe it was just a portion of the chromatic scale too, because we didn't play all 12 notes. So maybe that's why it's missing that characteristic atonality to it. But anyways, so there is a tonal shift here that kind of acts as foreshadowing to the eerie stuff. I like that. There is foreshadowing in here. I don't remember what it was foreshadowing about earlier either. I remember somewhere in the bridge I was like, oh, they introduced this so long ago. I don't remember what the section was though, what it was doing. But everything in here generally has a good flow to it. And even if it's an interesting direction, there is still something that ties it back, some sort of bridge. And I think they do a great job at retaining an identity to the song. And this is one of the ways that they do it. But yeah, so we go to this more eerie part, and then that takes us to a new driving section, which I thought was cool. I honestly thought after this we were going to return back to verse chorus, because that's how all the other bands have done it this week. That's how heavy metal has traditionally done it. Everything that this band, that I can draw lines to other bands or other influences, that's what is to be indicated by all that. And instead, they do the eerie thing again and the driving section again. So we have an A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D. That is a very interesting structure right there. From there, we bring in a completely new idea, an E, and that takes us back into the intro lick, which I thought was pretty clever. We have this song that has these mini cycles, but it is linear. It continues to explore new ideas, but we loop it all back in by ending where we started, giving it that connectivity. It ends up feeling quite complete that way, and it's just that one small little twist at the end, and I think that's pretty clever. Like I said, it's pretty classy to do that. It ends up working well for them. But that's generally the whole song for me. I don't have anything else to add to it. It's rather straightforward as far as the writing. The riffs themselves are not too intricate. The drum work is consistently metronomic. There's not too many fancy drum fills in here or melodic drum lines. The vocal melody is very repetitive. He's got like one or two melodies and he just alternates between them and then just changes the words that he sings with the melody itself. There's no counterpoint, there's no polyrhythm. It's just straightforward, good rock. Or, in a sense, good heavy metal with a modern rock flair. Yeah, it's stoner rock. It's kind of its thing. But I do have one thing I want to add on to this, and that's a general instability to the time. It's interesting coming off of Elder yesterday, where time fluctuation was a massive part of that song. The way that they controlled time feel with metric modulation and odd phrasings and phrase extensions. Here I found that right off the start, I think it was within 30 seconds, that there was some time manipulation, an accelerando possibly a speeding up of the song, but it ends up reining itself back in and then kind of dipping under a little bit before rushing again. And maybe That's all intentional. They want the beginning of the song to feel very loose time-wise like that, but what I get out of it is a drummer who isn't a perfect metronome. And so the song ends up speeding up until it rushes. And then the next part comes in, which is a bit more laid back. They do have this push and pull, much like Elder, where some parts are faster and some parts are slower, and they jump back and forth between these two time feels. But because of this, the drummer doesn't have these time feels locked down. And so the tempo actually shifts gradually throughout these sections. Now, I will say the band does a phenomenal job of sticking together during these. When the drummer speeds up, for the most part, the guitars speed up. There are a few sections where it feels like the song's about to fall apart because the drums feel ahead of the band, and it's like the guitars are playing the true tempo and the drummer's speeding up too much. Even towards the end of the song, there's still some of this instability in it. I wager I'm going to see some comments under this video. The imperfections are what make it great. It's what makes it human. Yeah, like I said, nothing ruins the song in any way, but it is something that I kind of wish was a little bit more perfect. Kind of keeping that tempo in time and kind of finding that perfection, because while it never falls apart, it does get distracting. For me, at least, I am paying more attention than I think most people do to the song, and maybe these imperfections are less visible if you're not looking for them. In fact, I know they are because they're very minute. We're talking about 2 to 3 BPM shifts. Most people aren't going to be able to feel that. I wouldn't be able to feel it if I was casually listening to this. It's because I'm hyper focused on every little detail that I was picking that up. Um, but we went over this in the live stream last week. It just comes from my background. Playing classical trumpet, even playing jazz trumpet. You drill it into your head that you practice weeks at a time in order to play a song as perfect as possible. Tempo discrepancies are not going to go over well. When you play competitively and you go to competitions and you get judged, this is the kind of stuff you get judged on. You want to be as perfect as possible, and doing that for over a decade, you kind of get that ingrained in you, that if you're playing sloppily, it's because you're not up to par. Your chops aren't up to par with what the song demands. That is a problem that you're bringing to the table, and it's not a problem in the larger concept of art. I think art allows for imperfections. And like with this song, it doesn't ruin it in any way, but there's always going to be that little part of my brain somewhere in the back. It's like, if only that drummer was a little tighter, you know? Anyways, enough for that. Let's dive into some lyrics, see what's going on with Snakes for the Divine. Alright, and lyrically, this song seems to be figuratively fantastical, in that there is a fantasy element to it. It's not just the language, although the very first line is "Sinister sister shall fall to the blade of my knife. Child of doom has begotten the powers to rise." It definitely has a bit of an older fantasy flair to the language. But it is also about sacrifices. There's religious elements in here. We have descriptions of the devil. We have knights of the goat. There's pagan elements to it. So it definitely has this fantasy component to it. But it's also, I think, figuratively speaking, I don't think it's just telling a story on the surface level. I think there is a second layer to it, but I don't know what it is. It's more of a gut feeling. I could just be off on this. My gut isn't always right. But I'm curious what anybody else's interpretation is of this. Honestly, I don't have much of one at all. There is a lot of mention of death, of punishment. The very end says that there's a blacked out sky and beliefs in pillars time, that we manifest death, and so our killers come to life. They break the spell and end my master's life. I am repelled. I don't It's telling a story about something. It's just jumping around too much for me to get it. It's not enough detail in it. There's a repeated phrase. It shows up twice during the A-B section, but it also is our final stanza. It says, blood trickles down through histories, which might talk about the recurrence of violence throughout time. But then it comes to the title of the track, given your sentence, you are handed the snakes of divine. I don't know what the snakes of divine are. I don't know if that's a punishment or if it's a reward. Being that we have someone who's sentenced, I'm going to assume it's a punishment, but where's the divination come into that? That sounds like a reward for something. That shows up quite a few times in here. Other than that, the only thing that really stands out to me is the chorus. There is a repeated refrain, rise up, fall down. It shows up between every line. The first line is suffering peace, the endless time. The third line is gazing at gold, the ancient crime. Then cities come alive and they will die. 10,000 years are left behind. This time, though, instead of saying rise up, rise down, after it says rise up tonight. So is the sentence for gazing at gold, and what would that mean beyond the literal definition of it? Is it really a crime to look upon an earthly material? I don't know. Maybe this is all part of a larger folk fantasy concept album. It is track 1 though, so maybe I should be able to get this regardless. This is an introduction to the world, lore, or story if it is a concept album. So I don't know. I'm very lost here. I don't really have any way to tie this back to the music either, but it feels like a pretty traditional heavy metal idea where they write some cool music, put some lyrics to it. They don't really have much to do with each other other than this is what the lyricist wanted to sing about, and this is the kind of music the band makes. They're smashed together in a functional way, and that the lyrics need music and music needed the lyrics. I don't know if that's always true. Lyrics tend to need music. Music doesn't always need words, though. Anyways, you get the idea there. Joined together by circumstance rather than artistry. But these are just my thoughts on High on Fire's Snakes for the Divine. Oh, Snakes for the Divine, but the song says that you get Snakes of Divine. Interesting. Doesn't make any more sense to me, but it is a division that I need to make note of. What do you all think of this, though? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own interpretation of either the music or the lyrics that might help me understand this song a little better? Put all that stuff down in the comments section, please. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.